Good morning, Mom's Master Books. Hey, hope you're having a fantastic start to your week. Today, I want to talk about math lessons for a living education, what it is as a program, and also some of the things we have coming down the pike with that series that we're excited to share. So one of the reasons that I want to talk about math lessons today, we have something that we've affectionately termed as a September mom here at Master Books. Maybe you can relate to this. You spent the last 8 months researching programs. You've been in the chat rooms, you've gone to the conventions, you've looked at every program available, you've gotten excited about the curriculum that you're using. You have these visions of the homeschool year was going to be the kids running in, giving you a hug, and then going to their desks and learning how to be Harvard scholars. And it was supposed to go that way, and you started your first day of school, and maybe now you're a little frustrated, and you moved into the first week, the kids aren't as excited, maybe your expectations were really high and things don't seem to be going that way, and there seems to be this intensity. And so a September mom for us typically is a mom who is kind of intense. Things aren't meeting her expectations, and usually when she contacts us, she's a little bit intense. And we get that because we know that this is kind of that year where reality meets expectations, and we begin making adjustments, right? Well, in the curriculum that we use, especially in a mass market, it's easy for us as a company to also think that everybody understands what it is we're trying to accomplish with curriculum. And it was interesting yesterday, there was even a comment that kind of went to the effect of, well, less math problems. Well, math lessons for a living education is far more than just doing less math. It's a creative way to do math. And I think it's important as a company that we really take time to invest in our trainers, our teachers, which is you, to understand the method behind what it is that we do and what we're trying to accomplish and what tool we're giving you when we give you math lessons. So let me tell you something that I think is very exciting, and I'll tell you this up front, I'll give you a little more details, but Angela Odell, who is the author of Math Lessons for a Living Education, is going to be doing a Math Teacher Monday, every Monday at 11 o'clock in this group, where she is going to discuss different friction points or different things that maybe teachers tend to struggle with, like right brain flashcards. Something that if you've never heard of it and you don't understand the science behind it, maybe a little help. In the past, Angela has talked about the place value village. And when she did a demonstration of place value village, it helps so many people grasp that concept. In business, it's common, right? For businesses, if I sell my system to you, I come and do training, and I train the trainer, and I teach you how to use my product and how to help your customer through the use of the product. And so we're going to use that model with some of our series, and we're starting with math lessons, and Angela's going to come in and do the kind of some teaching tips on things. So in the post today, if you're watching, I would love it if you can tell us if we want to know the wins, what you like about math lessons for a living education, like what resonates, but we also want to know the friction points. What are some things that when you got it and you looked at it, you just kind of scratched your head and said, boy, I wish I had a little bit more information on why they did this or what I'm supposed to do here. And that will give us something. We typically don't like to focus on those things, but this will give us kind of an agenda that we can work towards in the future, especially that Angela can work towards. So that's really exciting. The other thing that we have coming is a teaching companion. And I'm excited about the teaching companion because it also gives an overview of what the heart behind the course was, what it means to help a student be in good brain for learning, what the scope and sequence is, what's being taught behind right brain flashcards, skip counting, those types of things that that maybe people wouldn't have a full understanding of, and then tips for each of the levels to help, this is what you would want to know in this level, and things like that. So that's coming as well. It's being cleaned right now, which means it's gone through editorial. It's being cleaned, and then it'll be given to design. So I would expect that to be out 6 to 8 weeks, within the next 6 to 8 weeks, and the PDF will come available. We'll let everybody know in this group that that's available. So be sure to comment for a chance to have 2,500 reward points added to your account. And again, want to know what you're thinking, but we'd love to know the friction points that you've had with Math Lessons for a Living Education if you're a user, or things that just would have helped to have a little bit more explanation that we can address. Okay. So one of the first things that I think we need to talk about is math teaching and the philosophies of education. So let me go to something outside of this. Let's say that I wanted to take karate. And so I go to the local karate gym downtown and I say, I want to learn karate. Some of us may have the perception that every dojo or every gym across the country that has karate written across the entry of the door teaches the same thing. And what's important to know is every teacher of karate has kind of a different system. There may be a standard with one system, but there are multiple systems. So one trainer may teach kind of glorified street fighting or grappling, where there's wrestling involved and some of the ultimate fighting type stuff. Others may teach more traditional approaches. Others may teach an approach that's heavy with leg exercises and kicking, where another may teach more, using the other person's weight and positioning them. All of the goal is the same, but there's different methods and philosophies that go into it. So not all are equal, right? Well, math instruction is the same, and I would say especially at the elementary levels, because really what we're doing at the elementary levels is we're preparing the student to be able to do higher level math functions, starting with algebra in 9th grade. That's what the game is, okay? When we're talking about math for elementary students, we're preparing them to do algebra in 9th grade. And that is a lot more than just memorization of facts. With math at those levels, what you're teaching them is you're teaching them patterns, recognition, critical thinking. They need to have abstract thinking. There's a lot of skills that are being developed through the elementary ages. It's more than just 1 + 1. Now, the goal is the same, to be able to perform those functions and to use math in real life. But the way that it's taught is going to be different. So some approaches may use an inductive approach. Some use a mastery approach or a spiral approach. There's Common Core and New Math. There's the Singapore method. And each of these methods have different approaches that have been used and adopted. Years ago, we had a business that sold homeschool curriculum, and one of our top selling lines was Saxon Math. And there was a gentleman, his name I think was Art Reed, and he had traveled with John Saxon. If you don't know about Saxon Math, John Saxon wrote Saxon Math. In the Saxon Method, John traveled all over the place selling his books out of the back of a car, trying to educate the world that his method was the best approach to teaching math. And Art had traveled with John. He believed in the method, and he would sell that method to everybody. Well, and then they would go to conventions, and they would talk about the Saxon Method and why they felt that was the best method, and all of these things. Over time, that company has sold. The Saxon family sold that. Harcourt now has it. They've added products like the geometry and some, the early level courses that don't necessarily teach the Saxon Method, but they filled out the line. Today, for a lot of people, when we go to a convention, they say, well, I need a math curriculum for my son. And what they're looking for a lot of times is just something that looks familiar, or something that maybe the kids are going to like and enjoy, right? And I agree with that. But with math, we need to understand that there are certain methods that are employed by the publishers, and there's a worldview that goes with it. Well, Math Lessons for a Living Education is a lot like Masterbooks in that we're a hybrid. We see the benefit in each of these methods. We see the benefit in mastery. We see the benefit in spiral. We see the benefit in inductive. We see the benefit in different philosophies of learning and studying. And so I think Angela did a great job of putting together an approach that is very eclectic, if you will, in that it draws the best from all of these different methods and creates a hybrid program. Now, Angela's part of this group, and if she disagrees with anything I'm saying, I would invite her to please say so and correct me if I've gone a little far outside the lines. I've never been good at coloring inside lines, so if Angela needs to let me know, feel free to. But I think we've done a great job also of the heart of what Angela wanted to create and then doing that. Now, Math K is a new product out this year. In fact, we just started shipping this last week. I know because I personally shipped out close to, I think it was close to about 300 or 400 of them. I boxed up alongside with Josh and sent out a ton of back orders to help get caught up. But what I love about the kindergartner level, and this is something people will look at this book and they'll say, well, you're teaching taller and shorter. Like there's in some of these pages, there's no math. Right, because they're teaching taller, shorter, wider, skinny, different concepts to help the brain develop. And so the foundations of this course are very brain centric, right? They're how does a student learn? What are they doing to develop? And how can we complement that to give them the best understanding of math? So if you were to label us as what type of philosophy do you use, I really think the best is we're a hybrid of many different approaches. There is a mastery approach in that there's review, but yet it's a bit of a you master it before you move on. I said that wrong. You master it before you move on, in that you narrate and you're applying the information. But there's also the review and some of the spiral method that brings you back to that. And then because once you have a skill, you're expected to keep using that skill, there's a continual process of review in the program. It's very inductive in that it's using real-world applications and problem solving, and I think it also focuses very heavily on some of the brain research and the training of how to connect the brain and have the brain all work together to solve problems and think abstractly. So I don't know that we can be pigeonholed into a very tight fit like we are a mastery-based program, because there's benefits of mastering a program, and then there's also benefits of a spiral approach and an application-based approach and an inductive approach in mathematics. So the series is tapping into each of those. Okay, so what are some of the hallmarks of Math Lessons for a Living Education? Number one, it's skill-based. Now, you'll find we have level K. This is the traditional where we would say a kindergartner, if you have a kindergartner, I would start them in this level. And then the next level, affectionately known by many as piggy math, right, is level 1. Now, something you'll notice is revised edition. I think every level now has gone through a revision, and you may not have it in your book, but I know that all the books have been gone through and we've updated, we've made changes. There might have been some friction points that were there that have been looked at and adapted, or some typos that were corrected and stuff like that. But back to the skills series. Okay, so what I recommend, we have a placement test, and if you pass the test, it's a readiness test. It says you're ready for level 1 or you're ready for level 2. And we would rather see students be in the skill level. Now, if you're jumping into the system and you're looking, level 1 would be traditional scope and sequence. It would be the equivalent of a first grade math. Level 2 would be a second grade, and it would follow the traditional scope and sequence that you would find in Horizons, teaching textbooks, BJU, or Rebecca. Now, so in getting into the program, we recommend using the placement test. Now, you may find that the student understands all the concepts, but maybe they don't understand how to tell time. And so telling time is one of the things that they're struggling with. We would consider that to be a learning gap. You can do that a couple of ways. You could go and just teach the time concept, or you could allow them to go back that level, do it at a faster rate. Now, oftentimes people will be like, well, it's too easy. My kid did 4 lessons in a day. That's okay, right? If they're willing to, and you're not having to beat them with a whip to do it, and they're excited about it, let them go. And eventually what you'll find with a series is they kind of come to that place where the learning and the skill level meet and they slow down. A lot of times with mathematics, you tend to see students get pigeonholed themselves or labeled, or they self-identify as, I'm not good in math. My mom or my dad aren't good in math. I'm not good in math either. So math is something to be survived. What we've seen time and time again is a parent who's not afraid to go back a level or start it a little earlier. We see the kids building confidence. Like, I can do this and I enjoy this. And as their confidence builds, they move into the level where their skill is, and they have the kind of what they need here to be able to do that. So I wouldn't be at all afraid to tell a mom to go to, if it's because they need time or they're missing a few concepts and they have a few learning gaps, go back a level and let them build confidence, let them reinforce the skills that they need, and let them do it at a faster rate. There's nothing that says you can't, do double or triple the work, because most of it is reviewed, and they're going to be able to fly through those lessons, and then it'll go a little slower when they come to the learning gaps. And then once they've mastered the gap and can move on, they're going to go a lot faster. So that's the way that I would recommend to a mom or dad who are looking at math lessons for living education as far as placement goes. Now, so it's going to follow a traditional scope and sequence. So you're going to find that the lessons or the concepts that are being taught in most of the popular methods that are available today are going to be the same. Sometimes people will say, it's not as intense as, say, BJU or Rebecca. That would be truth, in that it's not as intense in the amount of work, but the approach that it uses is it's just using a different approach. It's a little bit gentler in the early grades in making sure that they have solid foundational concepts, but by the time you work into the 6th grade level, you are fully prepared for pre-algebra, 7th and 8th grade math, and then algebra. So the transition into the 7th and 8th grade in a pre-algebra course is very on par. And I would say 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, all of those grades are on par as well with other curriculums. It's just that you're not going to see as much drill and kill and the rigor of some of the other programs. So let's a little bit. Number one, it's skill-based is how we recommend you use it, rather than, no, they're in 2nd grade, they need to use level 2. So definitely take the placement test. Another is it's very foundational. So even in the kindergarten program, what we want students to develop here. And Carrie Bailey is, she is a trained early education, has experience with kindergartner education, special needs education, and she partnered with Angela in writing this. And I am a huge fan of this book just because it teaches foundational things like stamina abstract thinking, contrast, pattern recognition, motor skills, fine motor skills, like just drawing lines or writing numbers, things that so many times we tend to bypass because we think our kids need to be doing 2 + 2 = 4 or 2 × 3 = 7. It doesn't, but I had to throw it out there. Those types of things, right? So I love that there's a very foundational approach to this. And what you're going to find in the stories even is the math that they're doing relates back to a real world story, something that they can relate to. Because so many times, how many times have you heard your kids say, why do I have to know this? Well, with Math Lessons for a Living Education, that's not something you hear, because you know why you have to know it. You just read a story about why we're learning this. So it's very application based. But those foundations are being built all the way through. And as they learn new concepts, it's built upon foundations that they would have already had. Okay, the application based. I think this is one of the strongest components of Math Lessons for a Living Education. And I just mentioned the application to real world stories. These are stories we can relate to. And when we do the math, when we're in the kitchen with grandma and we're baking a pie and we're learning about measuring and cups and what's needed, we're developing very real world skills, but it's very application based, and it engages many more parts of the brain than just the memorization side of the brain or just following the procedures. And so many of the math is, this is how you add, this is how you subtract, this is how you divide, but it doesn't give any real world application to build those connections in the brain. Brain science is amazing. And I think it's so important that as we're teaching, that we begin to have some understanding of how the brain makes connections and how we want a much more holistic approach to teaching and education. We want a safe learning environment so that the brain isn't producing stress hormones and isn't trying in a survival brain like the video I posted. We want to make sure that we're using manipulatives and areas where we can practice different ways of learning to make different connections in the brain. The application base of Math Lessons for a Living Education, I think, is one of its strongest selling points. It's regulated. We believe that you're the smartest person to decide how much math should be done, but we regulate it in that our daily schedules are very doable. If I have 1 page a day, that's not overwhelming to a student. I just got to do 1 page of math a day and I'm done. And I think we get a lot of bang in for the buck. But Kristen, my wife, has this beautiful analogy, and I want to do a video of it because I think it would help us all understand. Imagine if you have 2 bowls, right? And I set these bowls in front of you, and I get a garden hose. And I want you to hold these bowls, and I'm going to fill the bowls. So the 1 bowl, I'm going to just squeeze the handle, water's coming out, it's going to be full force. How much of the water is going to stay in that bowl? And would you be comfortable standing around that bowl? Most likely no, because everything I spray into that bowl is going to splash out and all over you, right? It's not going to be retained. If I control the amount of the flow, if I squeeze the handle a little bit, so just a little bit of water comes out, and I build some water in the bowl, and I can increase water pressure as water increases in the bowl, but I've got to make sure that I regulate that so that it's not too much. And I think what happens with a lot of the math curriculums that we use, they're designed for another application. They're designed for classrooms. And we just come in, it's like squeezing the nozzle on the hose into the bowl, and all of it just kind of splashes out. And at the end of the year, when we do a standardized test or we begin talking about it, we're like, what? Why don't they know any of this? We spent the whole year doing fractions. We spent the whole year doing division, and they're not retaining anything. And I think part of that is because it's not the flow is too much, and a lot of it just splashed out. So I think using bite-sized daily lessons are a really good approach to not overwhelming the student and allowing the bowl to fill with knowledge and preparing them. Remember, we're training them for higher level math concepts. So they don't need to do algebra in second grade. They just need to learn the skills that are appropriate for their brain capacity and building the foundation of that. So, okay. Something else that is important with all of Masterbooks curriculum and part of the method that we use is making it manageable. The homeschool environment is not anything like a classroom. Okay, you have, perhaps, if you have multiple students, you've already exceeded the traditional classroom. Now, in some classrooms in the elementary level, the teacher may teach 5 subjects, but she's a third grade teacher, and so she's teaching third graders, third grade math, third grade language, third grade science, third grade history, and third grade recess, whatever. You're not. If you have 3 students, then chances are you're now teaching, third grade in all those subjects, 6th grade in all those subjects, and kindergarten in all those subjects. You've tripled the workload that you have. And for a lot of moms, that causes burnout and stress. And so what we've tried to do with our curriculum is make it so that it's very manageable, so that you have a daily schedule. You're not sitting at the table all day long trying to force them through the same math concepts over and over again, and then having them have to do the homework at night. It's a manageable amount, but the system is also very manageable. And through the instruction, everything is built into it, so it's fairly easy. You don't need to have certification in mathematics. You don't need to have another book. Everything that you need is in these books. One downside that I would say is some people will jump in and say, well, I have a third grader. I didn't want to put her in the second grade book or the level 2, so we just went into level 3, but there's no instruction. Well, because it's skill-based, it expects that by the time a student hits skill level 3, they have acquired all of the skills in level 2. And so if that's the case, then if you get into a level and say there's not enough instruction, it's because that skill was already taught. The teaching companion will help with that, but just something to note. The other thing that happens often, especially in the September mom season, like I talked about at the beginning of this, is people will be like, it's too easy. My kids are just flying through it. Well, the beginning of each of the books is review. So the first few weeks of each level, Angela can probably knows how many, but the beginning of each of these is review. So they should know it. It should be easy for them. If it's not easy for them, then chances are they don't understand the material. They should be in the level prior to that. So just a couple things to note if you bought it and you're having questions. Now, again, any questions you have, any friction points you have on the math, I want you to make sure that you type it in the comments for 2 reasons. Number one is we're going to choose somebody for a chance to put 2,500 reward points into your account. The second thing is Angela's doing the Math Teacher Monday, where she's going to be training the trainer and giving instruction on some of the things that we want to be able to help you with, like right brain flashcards, skip counting, place value village, reasons why we use certain methods of instruction in math lessons, just different things like that. So if you have any points of confusion, we want to know that because it'll help us better serve you, and it'll help Angela better know how to address the needs that you have as a math teacher. So, one of the things we don't always have, let me tell you what homeschooling has. Homeschooling has lots of opinions, right? Everybody has an opinion. And if I Google homeschool math, I'm going to find how many mommy bloggers who all know about the most recent program they're using. But what we don't often have is good, solid, continuing education. where we've bought into a curriculum, and now they're helping us use this tool to its fullest advantage. And that's really what we want to start doing in this group now. It's great for customer service. It's great to answer questions. It's great as a connection, but we also want to use and leverage this platform as a way to provide additional value to the members, that you're going to get some additional instruction in how to use these tools to your fullest advantage. Okay, so manageable was another. I had we serve mostly homeschool market, and other publishers were they built their curriculum for classrooms. And I think it's difficult because somebody will take a curriculum that was designed to be taught in a classroom and bring it into the homeschool environment and try to use that. Well, we did differently in that we said, no, let's meet the needs of the home market and see if schools can use it. One of the biggest compliments I had with math lessons was I contacted a school. They kind of lauded themselves as being very holistic and very out of the box for education. And so I provided them with free samples of the books. I gave the teachers resources. I helped coach the beginning and how we would launch that, all of these things. And they tested it and piloted it for 1 year in a school setting. And the teachers came back to me at the end of the year and said, we love the philosophy, we love the instruction, but it was too student centric. It was too it was developed too much for the needs of the student, and it wasn't developed enough for the needs of the classroom. Now, some people would say that wasn't good because we'd love to sell into a school. I think it was a win, because what I want is to make sure that we have a student-centric solution that parents can easily administer in their setting. And that's what we see with Math Lessons for a Living Education. So every book that you see, you're going to see, the daily lesson plan at the beginning that you can easily follow. But again, this is a tool, and you adapt it, you control it, you set the schedule, do what's best for your family. These are the beginnings so that you have something to fall back to. But this isn't the law. You're the law. This is just a tool. Okay. You're going to find a review at the beginning of the books. You're going to find Monday through Friday exercises. Each week begins with a story. Throughout the rest of the week, the next 5 days, Monday through Friday, after they read the story, they begin doing math related to the story. And some of the stories are they're not overly complicated, and they're not supposed to be. The stories aren't supposed to take away from the math, but they do model character, which is something that I think is phenomenal. They model family, they model character, they model compassion, so many different things they model just besides the math concept. So we've gotten really good feedback from families especially some families that maybe don't have a traditional family structure, to really appreciate the fact that there's some modeling and some character building in the math course like that. So, and then the reviews are part of the course and it's going to be through students explaining back to you that they understand the concepts and those things. And I hope Angela will be able to articulate a lot of that as to how she recommends you do that. Now, I told you we have the companion guide coming. Angela's going to be doing Math Teacher Mondays, something that will be coming out in 2020. Some of our audience just needs a test. Some of our audience needs to have another worksheet to give the student. Or maybe there's a, over the summer you want to maintain some of the skills, or maybe you go back and do some learning gaps, those type of things. So in 2020, right now, my proposal is that Angela is going to create a review book or a review pack that basically will have extra practice problems and some reviews or quizzes and that type of things for families who love the philosophy behind math lessons for living education, but have a really hard time stepping out of the paradigm of some of the more traditional approaches, or would like to have some extra materials for review and practice. And so that is on the way as well. So let's see. Okay, I think I covered a lot. The one other thing that we have, and it's available now, I should have had it closer to me, is right brain flashcards. Now, a very simplistic approach is for right brain students, right brain sees a lot more of the picture, and this is the equal to when I understand 1 + 1 = 2, and I'm studying a flashcard, and I can even go 1 + 1 = 1, 2. I'm building a whole picture, or I'm establishing in the right brain that math fact. And so for some students that struggle with the problem solving, I'm going to let Angela explain this a lot more in detail when she does the Monday math teacher segment. But essentially, you're helping the connect the parts of the brain that also see the answer filled in. Well, right brain flashcards for some moms are really just, it's like hands-on science that sounds really good at the convention, but then in practice, when life happens, it's hard to keep up with. So what we did was it's on a heavy cardstock, and we've printed the front, and then we've printed it on the back. Jessica, I don't even know how I said that. Jessica McCullough, who's one of our moderators in this group, actually helped develop these and did a fantastic job of them. So what we did was, we looked at a lot of different ways of providing these affordably and in a way that families could use them. So these are on sheets. Now each of the facts are presented in one way. So when you have 1 + 3 = 4, you're not going to see 3 + 1 = 4. That's going to be the only way that you see it, but you could easily create another card if you needed to. But just to keep these affordable and whatnot. So they come like this. They have the lines. Now, what kid doesn't need scissor practice? So easy enough, you can hand your kids scissors, or you could cut them out, or you can do whatever works best for your family. But essentially on this side would be the horizontal method. On this side would be the vertical method. So you can use these for two ways. This deck includes all of your addition and subtraction cards, and it's also on a matte finish. So if you wanted to draw pictures, or your student wanted to put something, create a story, one dad, one mom is a couple, two people now type thing. You could easily do that. So I put a link to this up in the description of the course, and I think the retail price on these is $14.99, and the sale price on masterbooks.com is $11.99. Something a lot of people may want to know is it available in digital format, so we can print these off. At present, no. And part of that, you'd be surprised at how many calls we get about the PDFs, and people who struggle with their printers and pages printing on one side, but the printers don't print on the back page and that type of thing. And in this case, because these cards are specifically formatted to have a front and a back side, and that the customer service issues that we feel it would create to make it available in digital may be difficult. So, okay, so that. And then one last thing, I see Angela said some states require more records than others, and she wants to make sure to accommodate that. Yes. And we also have the cumulative record book as well that we released a couple weeks ago that helps with that. I'm not sure I'm jumped in on it. I just saw that passing by. But I know with quizzes and tests that's one of the reasons that some families want to have kind of a quiz or a test, as well, is just to be able to have something to put down and a record to have if their state requires it. Okay, so as I said in the beginning, if you purchase Math Lessons for a Living Education and you did it because a friend was using it and everything else, and then you got into it and you're like, well, I don't know if I fully understand that. Hopefully this video has helped you understand a little bit of what we're trying to accomplish here. And then any questions that you have, be sure to post them in the comments so we can go through this and get a full listing of some things that Angela can address. And then we know some things too. I want her to explain right brain flashcards, skip counting posters, and show us how to do that, some of these things. So I absolutely love the philosophy behind this series because it's out of the box and it does such a good job of not overwhelming the student, right? The garden hose, just give them what they can, govern it to the amount and regulate it to the amount that they can actually hold and retain in preparing them for the next level.